Hi, welcome to the video where I show you how we built the Cloudriven Sports Benefit Ordering app on PowerApps. So the scenario is that employees are entitled to recreational benefit of up to 400 euros annually, and they can use this benefit to go to cultural events or go to do some sports and pay for the entry fees to gym or something like that. And we thought we could use an app for that because our internal process is such that we load the balance on the cards 4 times a year. So we have distributed the 400 euros so that we load 100 euros quarterly for everybody. And if the employee hasn't used his previous balance at all, then we don't load the next 100 euros, because once you load the balance on the card you can never get it back. So it's basically a way of wasting money if the money is never going to be used. And then on the other hand, some employees will need to have the whole sum 400 euros at one go if they need to buy a gym card for the whole year. So then they can order the full sum right away. So we thought we could build an app for this, and that's the Sports Benefit Ordering app that you are looking at here. So first we needed to have a data source for the data, and we made it very simple. We created a SharePoint list on the HR workspace, and basically this is the list that hosts the process. So every request for a balance refill is added as a new row into this list, and HR will then monitor the requests and work on those requests. If we look at the list schema in more detail, it's very simple. So basically mostly only the amount for the requested balance is needed to be filled in. If the employee needs to have a bigger amount than the quarterly 100 euros, they need to give some reason to HR, and then the request has a status. It can be pending, it can be approved or rejected. Then the HR fills in the loaded balance. If after the request has been approved and they actually load the balance on the card, they mark here what was the final amount that was actually loaded, should it differ from the requested amount. So that's why we use a separate field. And then if the request is rejected, then HR can comment on why it was finally rejected. But a very simple list, and of course we can add more columns later if we want to enrich the list experience also for the admins. But if I jump now back to the application, now the first thing to do, of course, is to add the data source to the application. If we view data sources, we can see I've added the benefit requests lists as a data source to the app, and it's the only data source that the application is going to need. Then if we start to think about building the application itself, I usually prefer to draw first the screens on a piece of paper to design what kind of screens I'm going to need and how they are going to look on a high level. And then I'm going to create the screens into the application by using the blank screen template. There are a lot of ready-made screens here provided by Microsoft, but I prefer to use the blank screen because it does not take usually much time to add all the required components on the screens and build them from scratch. So for this application we designed it to use 6 screens, and I created them and named them right away in the beginning. So the first screen is landing screen, then we have a summary screen that summarizes the user's current benefit situation for the year. Then we have an order lobby screen that when user starts to order some balance refill, then this is the screen where it starts that ordering process. Then we have a custom order screen. If user needs a order for a custom amount, then he will have to fill in this form. Then we have a success screen, and finally we have the order status screen. So with these 6 screens, we can host the whole process inside this application. So if we then go into more details of the screens, let me just switch to the tree view of the screens. The landing screen, the purpose of the landing screen is basically just to give a common look and feel for the application. There's a whole suite of cloud-driven apps for the employees, and they all share the same look and feel, and we feel it's important for the employees to understand that okay, this is now the official application that I should use because it looks the same as the other ones, and it gives them the familiar experience right from the first screen. Even though the first screen does not have anything else but the button to actually start ordering, then we feel it's a really nice way to basically have a splash screen on every application. And if we look at the elements that are therein, there's the common header. This header element repeats on every screen, and it consists of the header background, and then the logos and the application title. And my recommendation is that you group these kind of elements together so that you can more easily then copy paste those same elements on every screen, and it's easier then to identically position them. And you can group them by selecting group from the menu once you have selected all the elements, and it creates this header group that is now a single movable element that can be moved or copy pasted on all the other screens. But that's basically the role of the landing page. If I click start ordering to go to the summary screen, we can see that here this is basically the main page of the application that summarizes what the cultural benefit is all about, and it shows users' history of this year's balance refill requests. And as we can see here, I have actually requested 3 balance refills. One of them has been approved by HR, one of them has been rejected, and the third one is pending. If we look at the components that build the page, we can see that the most important thing here is the past orders gallery. So this is a gallery component, and I recommend you to name gallery components so that the gallery is actually in the name. Similarly as naming screens, you have the screen in the name, and if it's a form, then keep the word form on the name. This makes it much easier for you to write the navigation functions, etc. when you are referencing other components. The default naming is not always something that is very easily understandable. You will have to look up the names from the component list here on the left hand side. But the purpose of this screen is to show the current status, and user can then click on the previous requests to see more details of the status. So this was approved, so there's nothing interesting there, but the first request was actually rejected, and we can see here that the reason for rejection was that I have not used my previous loaded balance. So for that reason HR is not loading more balance to my card. This field, as we can see in the visible attribute, it's only shown when the status is rejected. So the column is not shown if the actual request was approved or is still pending. And similarly, you can show or hide individual columns from the list item on these PowerApps forms. Then if we want to go forward and I want to actually make a fresh order for some recreational balance, first we can see that I have 300 euros remaining for this year's balance. That's actually calculated by getting from the benefit request list all rows that I have created during this year, and it then subtracts that sum from 400 euros. So I have 100 euros worth of approved loaded balances on the list. So there's still 300 euros to go for me this year. And then I have two possibilities to request. I can order regular 100 euro fill, which is the refill that's regularly done 4 times a year. Or I can order refill for a bigger amount, or just different amount, but usually that would be bigger. If I want just the regular refill, it's as simple as clicking this button, and it will actually make a patch function call to the list, creating a new item with the default amount of 100 euros. And basically that's all that's needed. So when you just want the regular 100 euro refill, you just need to click the button like that, and then it would go to the success screen, and your request has now been submitted to HR. So now if I go back to the summary screen, we can see that my request that I just made is now actually pending on the HR side. And we can now jump back to the lists and see that there is actually now the new refill request, and as an HR person I can now just go and approve that, and we can approve it for the amount of 100 euros. And now jumping back to the application, and just I need to refresh my data source to see the changes. We can see that the request has now been approved also here. Now should I want to request for a bigger amount, I can use the ordering form, order refill for a different amount, and then in this situation I need to fill in the amount with a reason why I would need a bigger amount than the usual 100, and then they would approve that for me. But all in all, that's about it. If we still look at the summary screen and the gallery component here, we can see that I have modified the default elements a bit by adding this status column here, and added some conditional coloring rules. If we can look at the color condition for the element, we can see that there's an if function that colors pending items with gray, rejected items with red, and approved items with green. So this gives then a lot of more value already directly on this list view without having to click and open the individual items. The exclamation marks here on the side, they basically are delegation warnings, meaning that the ways that I'm getting the data from the data store is not very performant or scalable to large amounts of data. However, in our use case, the amount of data will always be small, so it will not really cost any slow performance for the application. But that concludes our walkthrough. Thanks for watching.